Good morning, students. Today we will discuss another infective syndrome, that is pyrexia of unknown origin. The previous class we have discussed about urinary tract infections, the laboratory diagnosis aspect of urinary tract infection. In the same way, regarding pyrexia of unknown origin also, we will know about the infective causes. Mainly, we should know about in the microbiological perspective, we should know about the infective causes of pyrexia of unknown origin or PUO, and the diagnosis part, how we diagnose in the laboratory those infective causes, we'll discuss in today's class. So what is PUO? Pyrexia of unknown origin means fever. Pyrexia means fever. Temperature rise, there will be a temperature rise, and the cause of that fever is not known even after investigation. The fever rise or temperature will be present for nearly more than a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, but even after investigations, the cause is unknown, still not diagnosed. So that is called pyrexia of unknown origin. When you see the definition, it is defined as PUO is also now called as FUO. FUO means fever of unknown origin. So pyrexia of unknown origin or FUO, fever of unknown origin. And the definition is like this. It is defined as temperature above 38 degrees centigrade, and this temperature for more than 3 weeks without diagnosis even after 1 week of investigation. So even after the investigation, we cannot come to a diagnosis. That condition is called pyrexia of unknown origin or fever of unknown origin. And Darek has classified this FUO or PUO into 4 different types as classic PUO, then neutropenic PUO, HIV associated PUO, and nosocomial PUO. So there are different types of clinical presentations. We'll know what are those one by one. What is classic PUO? So in all the PUOs, there is temperature rise, like more than 38.3 degrees centigrade. So temperature, what is classic PUO? Temperature rise more than 38 degrees centigrade on several occasions. Patient has had the illness for more than 3 weeks. So he'll be having this temperature rise or fever for more than 3 weeks, and the diagnosis has not been established even after 1 week of inpatient investigation. So even after inpatient investigation, 1 week of inpatient investigation, the diagnosis has not been established. That is called classic PUO. So in classic PUO, there is temperature rise on several occasions for more than 3 weeks, and the diagnosis has not been established even after 1 week of inpatient investigation. That is classic pyrexia of unknown origin. What is nosocomial PUO? In nosocomial PUO, temperature rise is there, that is more than 38.3 degrees centigrade, and the patient has been hospitalized for more than 24 hours and was not incubating a fever on admission. So at the time of admission, the patient is not having any temperature. On admission, the patient will not have any temperature, and the patient will not be incubating a fever. That means he is not even in the incubation period. So he is normal. So after entering into the hospital only, if the person gets a temperature more than 38.3 degrees centigrade, and if that fever is not diagnosed even after investigation for at least 3 days, it is called nosocomial pyrexia of unknown origin. That means after entering into the hospital, that means he has contracted the disease or infection from the hospital environment. That is called hospital acquired or nosocomial PUO. The definition is temperature more than 38.3 degrees centigrade, and the patient has been hospitalized for more than 24 hours and was not incubating fever on admission. He was not having fever and was not incubating the fever or on admission and has undergone evaluation for at least 3 days. That is nosocomial PUO. What is immune deficient PUO? Immune deficient PUO means there is temperature raise that is more than 38.3 degrees centigrade, and the evaluation has been done for at least 3 days. And immune deficient, that means the person is having a low WBC count or neutrophil count is less than 500 per cubic mm. That is immune deficient PUO. That is temperature raise is there. Evaluation, even after evaluation for 3 days, the diagnosis is not known, and besides that, the patient's WBC count will be less. Neutropenia will be there, that is neutrophil count less than 500 per cubic mm is called immune deficient pyrexia of unknown origin. HIV associated PUO. HIV associated PUO means there is temperature raise that is at more than 38.3 degrees centigrade. Evaluation has been done since 3 days, but the diagnosis is not yet. But the doctor doesn't come to a diagnosis even after 3 days of evaluation, and fever will be there for more than 4 weeks outpatient. So at home itself for more than a month, the person will be having fever, and after inpatient admission also for more than 3 days, the patient will be continuing to have the fever, and the HIV infection has been confirmed. He is a definite HIV positive patient. Then he will be called HIV associated pyrexia of unknown origin. The condition is HIV associated pyrexia of unknown origin. So there are 4 different types of PUOs. One is classic PUO, nosocomial PUO. Nosocomial PUO means after entering into the hospital or in the hospital premises, he gets the infection, and it is called nosocomial PUO. And immune deficient PUO, where there is neutropenia along with rise in temperature. And HIV associated PUO is the pyrexia of unknown origin condition, that is temperature raise in a HIV positive person. It is HIV associated PUO. So what are the causes for this pyrexia of unknown origin? The causes can be classified into 2 types: infectious causes and non-infectious causes. Definitely infectious causes are caused by microorganisms, and those microorganisms can be bacteria or fungi or virus or parasites. So those come under infectious causes. Non-infectious causes include some granulomatous conditions or HIV, not HIV, granulomatous conditions, and other carcinoma conditions. Those those causes come under non-infectious causes. So we'll see one by one what are the causes of pyrexia of unknown origin. So these are the bacterial causes. Bacterial causes of PUO include Salmonella species, which cause enteric fever. Enteric fever, typhoid caused by Salmonella species. Sometimes typhoid fever or enteric fever is cannot be diagnosed. The doctor or the physician do not think in the lines of Salmonella infection, and the treatment will be given in from other aspects. You have to suspect typhoid and enteric fever also in case of PUOs. Brucella species, this is also not easily identified. Brucella infection, Brucella that causes brucellosis. This infection is sometimes not identified easily. Brucella species, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which causes tuberculosis. Chlamydia psittaci, which causes lymphogranuloma, venereum fevers, trachoma caused by Chlamydia psittaci. Then leptospirosis caused by Leptospira. Rickettsia, which causes typhus fever and spotted fever. Spotted fevers and typhoid fevers caused by Rickettsia. Coxiella burnetii, Mycoplasma pneumoniae, which cause lung infections. Atypical mycobacteria, which cause lung infections. These all are some bacterial causes of PUO. Bacterial causes of PUO. So not common bacteria, but some some uncommon bacteria only like chlamydia, leptospira, rickettsia, coxiella, mycoplasma. These are all are the causative agents for PUO from bacteria. So what are the virus etiology? What viruses cause PUO? Cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, arbovirus, enterovirus, HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. These are the causative agents of PUO. These viruses are the causative agents of PUO. Then fungi. So in infectious causes, the fungi that can cause PUO include Candida albicans, Cryptococcus neoformans, Histoplasma capsulatum, Aspergillus species, Coccidioides immitis. These are the fungal causes of PUO. So what parasites can cause PUO? The parasites list include Entamoeba histolytica, Plasmodium species which cause malaria. Entamoeba histolytica causes liver abscess. Then Leishmania species, Trypanosoma species, Toxoplasma gondii, then Voceraria bancrofti, Brugia malia, which cause filariasis. So these are the parasitic causes of pyrexia of unknown origin. What are the non-infectious causes of PUO? The non-infectious causes of PUO include mainly carcinoma conditions like lymphoma, leukemia, myeloma, renal cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer. So all the neoplasms come under non-infectious causes of PUO. That means in these conditions the patient will be having temperature where the cause is unknown. Connective tissue disorders like systemic lupus erythematosus, SLE, polyarthritis nodosa, metabolic disorders like gout, porphyria. Even in these metabolic disorders and connective tissue disorders, the person will be having fever for more than 3 weeks, but the cause cannot be known. Granulomatous diseases like Crohn's disease, sarcoidosis, rheumatoid arthritis, polymyositis. Even in these conditions, granulomatous conditions, which are the non-infectious causes of PUO. Now coming to the laboratory diagnosis part. So depending upon the patient's condition, different samples can be collected like blood, urine, pus, or sputum like that. So the blood sample can be collected for complete blood count or CBC, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, and blood sample can be done with Leishman stain. Smears can be observed, thick and thin smears are prepared, blood smears are prepared, then blood can be cultured and blood can be used for serological tests also. So these are the blood is collected after following strict aseptic precautions. Blood sample is collected, and even for culture blood is collected in blood culture bottles. 5 ml of blood is collected in 50 ml bottles. Glucose phosphate broth in those mediums, blood is collected. Then in case of urinary tract infections, urine sample can be collected for urine analysis and culture. If any lung infection is suspected, then sputum sample can be collected. Then any localized abscess are there, then pus sample can be collected, and bone marrow can be collected for biopsy, for culture, like that. So basing on this, the specimen should be collected preferably before starting the antibiotics. So before before starting the antibiotics, the sample like blood, urine, pus should be collected by taking sterile aseptic precautions in sterile containers. The samples should be collected. So with this complete blood count, after observing the complete blood count, the physician can come to an idea about whether it is a pyogenic infection or tubercular origin. For example, if there after doing the complete blood count, if there is more number of neutrophil in the complete blood picture. If the neutrophil count is more, then he can suspect pyogenic infection. If the neutrophils or polymorphonuclear leukocytes are more, then pyogenic infection can be suspected. If there is more number of eosinophils, eosinophil count is more, then parasitic infection can be suspected. Any parasite etiology can be suspected if more number of eosinophils are present. If ESR is more, is more than, if it's abnormally high, then he can suspect, the physician can suspect or think in lines of tubercular etiology. Tuberculous etiology, if ESR is more, then we can suspect the tuberculous origin. And blood sample can be stained with Leishman stain, or thick or thin smears of blood can be done for knowing about the malarial parasites, about parasites like Plasmodium falciparum or Trypanosoma or Leishmania can be observed with this thick and thin smears or Leishman stain of blood sample. Then blood can be cultured also. So in case of systemic infection, if there is the temperature for more than 3 weeks, blood sample can be cultured in the proper blood culture bottles. BHI broth, brain heart infusion broth, and it is incubated for a week or so, and then the blood sample is inoculated on McConkey and blood agar, and if a tubercular etiology is suspected, then you can inoculate the sample on LJ medium. Okay. Then from this blood culture, we can diagnose brucella. Brucella, which causes brucellosis, can be diagnosed from the blood culture. Then different serological tests can be done from the blood sample. Then urine culture can be done by inoculating the sample on different media like McConkey, blood agar, or Cled medium. Likewise, pus samples, sputum samples can be inoculated on the common media that we know like McConkey, blood agar, or any other selective media depending upon the type of organism being suspected. So microscopy, first after the sample is collected, first step that we do in the laboratory is microscopy. In case of amoebic liver abscess, the stool sample is collected, and the stool sample is subjected to wet mount. So in wet mount, you can see the Entamoeba histolytica, trophozoites, cysts of Entamoeba histolytica can be observed in the wet mount in case of amoebic liver abscess. If the patient is suspected with the tuberculosis, the sputum sample can be collected, and that sputum sample is done with the Ziehl-Neelsen stain. So with the sputum sample, Ziehl-Neelsen staining is done to the sputum sample, and we can detect the acid-fast bacilli which are where we can suspect Mycobacterium tuberculosis. We can detect acid-fast bacilli in Ziehl-Neelsen staining from sputum sample. Likewise, fungi can also be detected by doing Ziemsa stain, or KOH mounts, potassium hydroxide mounts can be done, and the different fungi can be detected. Then after doing the first step, after doing the microscopy, next we can proceed with the culture. Culture is done on, the sample is inoculated on media like McConkey agar or blood agar. In case of tuberculosis, we can inoculate on Lowenstein-Jensen medium. If it is a fungal etiology is suspected, then we have to inoculate the sample on Sabrose, dextrose agar, like that. So culture is done by inoculating on different media depending on whether it is bacterial or fungal or mycobacterial like LJ medium, and media is incubated overnight for bacterial organisms. For bacteria, it is incubated overnight, and then next day we can see the growth of the organisms. By detecting the growth, by observing the growth we can come to, and we can further confirm the organism by doing biochemical tests, and we can check the antibiotic sensitivity also by doing antibiotic sensitivity testing. The organism to which drug it is sensitive, we can know by doing antibiotic sensitivity testing. This is the routine protocol that we do in the microbiology laboratory after we get a sample. So depending upon, so we have to first look into the provisional diagnosis what the doctor has kept, or if it is a PU also, we have to think in that line, and accordingly the culture and the further biochemical reactions can be kept. So these are some other investigations done to arrive to a diagnosis, like imaging studies, chest X-ray, GIT barium studies, CT scan, MRI, IV, intravenous urogram, scan of a lung or bone. These tests can be done to arrive to a confirmed diagnosis. So what serological tests can be done in the lab? So we collect the blood sample from the patient with the PUO. So what serological tests we can do is, we can do ELISA, enzymatic immunosorbent assay for the detection of different viruses like HIV, CMV, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus. So the viral antigens or antibodies can be detected by doing this serological test, that is ELISA. Then complement fixation test can be done for diagnosing LGV, lymphogranuloma venereum, caused by chlamydia, trachomatis, serotype L1 to L3, psittacosis caused by chlamydia psittaci, tularemia caused by Francisella tularensis, Q fever caused by Coxiella burnetii. So these chlamydia and different types of the serotypes of chlamydia can be detected by complement fixation test. Their antibodies can be detected by this complement fixation test. Then other serological tests include rheumatic fever. Rheumatic fever caused by Streptococcus pyogenes can be detected by doing ASO test, anti-streptolysin O antibody, anti-streptolysin O titer. So if the anti-streptolysin O titer is more than 200, then we can suspect that some streptococcal infection is there, which is the causative agent of rheumatic fever. Then SCAT, agglutination test for brucellosis. So brucellosis these antibodies can be detected by doing agglutination test. Then rickettsia. Rickettsia can be detected serologically by doing Weil-Felix test, which is a heterophile agglutination test. It is a heterophile agglutination test. So the serum of the patient with the typhus fever is when mixed with the Proteus antigen, agglutination takes place. That is Weil-Felix test. It is a heterophile agglutination test which is done in case of rickettsia or typhus fever infections. Then Paul Bunner test done for infectious mononucleosis. It is also a heterophile agglutination test. Paul Bunner test is also a heterophile agglutination test. Widal test, which is a common agglutination test done to detect the Salmonella antibodies, which cause typhoid fever. Then rheumatoid arthritis can be detected by doing the serological test, RA factor test, RA test. Rheumatoid arthritis, which is an agglutination test done in the lab. So a rise in titer of this antibodies can detect that the cause can be rheumatoid arthritis. So these are some different serological tests you do to diagnose different infectious etiologies caused by Streptococcus pyogenes, which cause rheumatic fever, Brucella, which cause brucellosis, rickettsia, which cause typhus fever, then infectious mononucleosis, typhoid fever caused by Salmonella, and rheumatoid arthritis can be detected by doing this RA test. This is again an algorithm to know about the diagnosis of the infectious etiology. First, in the laboratory, we do peripheral blood smear. With the blood sample, we can do the peripheral smear to detect malaria caused by Plasmodium. Then Leishmania or Trypanosoma can be detected by just a simple blood peripheral smear, or by you can do a Leishman stain to detect these Leishmania or Trypanosoma parasites, parasitic origin or etiology. Then sputum sample microscopy, you can do Z-Nielsen stain or Z-Nielsen staining to detect Mycobacterium tuberculosis or atypical Mycobacterium, like that. Acid-fast bacilli is detected from the sputum sample after doing Z-Nielsen staining. Then fungi can be detected by treating the sputum by performing Giemsa stain to the sputum sample. Fungi can be detected. Any budding yeast cells or any hypha can be detected in the Giemsa staining. Then after microscopy, we do the culture. Culture is done to different samples depending upon the site of infection, whether there is any urinary tract infection or lung infection or pneumonia or lung abscess or any localized infection, you collect the pus sample, or for systemic infections, you can collect the blood sample. So blood sample, blood is inoculated into glucose broth, taurocolate broth, or BHI, Reinhardt infusion broth. It is incubated for a week or so, and then it is subcultured. Blood is subcultured on blood agar and McConkey agar, and you can look the colonies, see the colonies, identify the colonies, and confirmation can be done by doing further biochemical tests. Urine sample is inoculated on McConkey agar, blood agar, or blood medium. Sputum sample inoculated on LG medium, blood agar, chocolate agar. Then pus is inoculated on blood agar, McConkey agar. So after you get the colonies on the different media, then you can proceed with antibiotic sensitivity testing, so that you get the correct drug to which the organism is sensitive and to which the organism is resistant. We can know and we can guide the clinician for proper treatment. Then the other serological tests you can do from the blood sample includes ELISA test to detect different viruses like HIV. Antigen antibodies can be detected by doing this ELISA. Paul Bundle test, which is a heterophile agglutination test done to detect infectious mononucleosis. Anti-streptomycin O test to detect a streptococcal infection which causes rheumatic fever. Vidal test to detect the typhoid fever. Wheel Phillips test, which is also a heterophile agglutination test done to detect typhus fever caused by rickettsia. Then other tests include skin tests. With the skin test, like MAN2 test, you can arrive to a diagnosis. It can be if any so if any MAN2 test is positive, then you can know it is tubercular origin or tubercular etiology can be known. And immunofluorescence test in case of this connective tissue disorders like systemic lupus erythematosus, you can know the LE cells and this antibodies, anti-nuclear antibodies can be detected or can be observed by doing this immunofluorescence test. LE cells and anti-nuclear antibodies, if they are observed, then you can confirm that it is a SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus. Then biopsy can be done, and liver bone marrow biopsies pathologically you can observe different cells. Depending on that, you can arrive to a diagnosis. So this is the approach to the diagnosis of PUO due to infectious and non-infectious causes also. Non-infectious causes diagnosis we have not discussed in detail, only the infectious causes laboratory diagnosis part we have discussed. It is about PUO and the diagnosis, how do you diagnose PUO in the laboratory. Okay, thank you.